This initiative is about making sure our technology reaches the communities that need it most. That is the smart move and the right thing to do.
I still don't understand how someone who got this role to check a box is making decisions for this entire company.
Hey, stop. Everyone can hear you. You are not on mute.
She thought she was on mute. She was not. And in the 47 seconds that followed, a $300,000 career evaporated in real time, broadcast live to over 400 colleagues, captured permanently on a company server, and witnessed by the very woman Kimberly had spent 6 months quietly despising. Before this story goes any further, where are you watching from? Drop your city or your country in the comments right now. Tell me whether you think she got what she deserved. Subscribe and turn on notifications because tomorrow's story hits just as hard. Share this so more people know what's really happening out here. See you in the next one. Kimberly was already pacing when she clicked the meeting link. It was a Tuesday in October. The Seattle sky outside her floor-to-ceiling windows sat flat and gray, the kind of morning that pressed down on the city like a held breath. Her home office was immaculate standing desk, dual monitors, an ergonomic chair she had expensed without a second thought. A life assembled from 4 years of exceptional performance reviews and a salary that cleared $300,000 annually once bonuses and equity were factored in. She had earned the apartment. She had earned the view. She had earned every square foot of the life she moved through with the easy confidence of someone who had never once been told she did not belong. The Zoom grid populated quickly. Hundreds of small rectangles filled her screen, faces arranged in the tidy geometry of the modern workplace engineers from Seattle and Austin, product managers dialing in from Denver, a cluster of sales leads in New York. Innovatech's all-hands meetings ran monthly, but this one had been flagged as important. The company had been growing fast, aggressive in its expansion into AI-driven platforms for enterprise clients. Kimberly kept her camera off. She always did during large meetings. Less pressure to perform engagement she did not feel. 4 years at Innovatech had given her standing. She was the kind of senior software architect whose name appeared in internal briefings when the company wanted to signal technical credibility to outside partners. She had built core infrastructure on 2 of the platform's most profitable product lines. Within the AI division, her expertise was not merely respected, it was relied upon. The problem had a name. The problem had been the problem for exactly 6 months. Brenda had been appointed CEO of Innovatech in April, brought in by the board to accelerate the company's push into new verticals. Her credentials were not in question, not on paper. An MBA from a top 5 program, 15 years in healthcare technology. At her previous firm, she had led an expansion that tripled the company's market footprint in under 4 years. The board had not announced her appointment so much as presented it as the obvious conclusion of a thorough process. Kimberly had read the press release and felt something tighten in her chest she could not immediately name. She named it eventually. In the private vocabulary she kept for thoughts she would never say aloud in a performance review. She had watched Brenda walk into her first all-hands meeting composed, unhurried, dressed simply and well and decided, before a single word was spoken, that the appointment did not add up. The credentials were real enough. But credentials could be curated. Boards could be pressured. She had filed Brenda's arrival under the category of engineered outcomes and had never revisited that judgment. In meetings, Kimberly was flawless. She nodded when Brenda outlined strategy. She asked procedural questions that appeared engaged without committing to agreement. She smiled in the breakout rooms. But to Lila, her closest teammate, the one person at Innovatech she trusted enough to speak candidly, Kimberly had been less careful. Over 6 months, a running commentary had passed between them in Slack threads and lunchtime calls. Observations about Brenda's decisions framed as professional concern. A subtext both of them understood without stating directly. Lila had mostly listened. Kimberly had taken that as agreement. She was thinking about one of those conversations when Brenda appeared in the main window and the session began. Brenda welcomed the company and moved quickly to the reason for the meeting. Innovatech was launching a new initiative, a partnership program to extend AI-driven tools to underserved communities across 3 pilot cities. Free access, reduced onboarding, a framework for equitable technology distribution. It was, Brenda explained, both the right thing and the smart thing. The data returned from diverse deployment environments would sharpen the platform in ways controlled testing never could. Kimberly stopped pacing. She had seen the policy memo that morning, new reporting requirements, additional check-in cadences, restructured documentation protocols that would add hours to her week. She had read it, and felt the particular irritation of someone who believed the person issuing instructions did not understand the work those instructions would interrupt. And now this. Resources redirected outward, dressed in the language of strategy when Kimberly heard it as something else entirely: performance, image management. She reached for her phone. Lila's name was near the top of her contacts. She pressed call. The line rang 4 times and went to voicemail. Kimberly set the phone down and looked back at the screen. She crossed her arms and began to speak to no one, she believed, to the general audience of her own empty office. What she did not know was that a software update she had dismissed 3 days earlier had introduced a glitch that reset her audio settings on joining. Her microphone was live, had been live since the meeting started. Over 400 people heard her voice through their speakers with perfect clarity. The chat moved before most people had processed what they were hearing. Warnings appeared in rapid succession. Her name, repeated, urgent. Someone typed in capitals. A colleague unmuted and said the words that should have stopped everything. They did not stop anything. Not yet. Kimberly was looking at her phone, and she kept going. The words that ended Kimberly's career were not subtle. They came out clean and direct the way a belief sounds when it has never had to defend itself out loud. Something about a black woman handed a CEO title to satisfy a boardroom checklist. Something about performative leadership dressed as strategy. Something about ideas that only sounded visionary because no one withstanding ever pushed back. Over 400 people heard every syllable. The recording captured all of it. In the main window, Brenda stopped mid-sentence. The pause lasted 2 seconds, long enough for everyone to see it. Her face did not collapse. It did not flush with anger. What happened to it was quieter, a brief involuntary stillness, the expression of a person absorbing a familiar kind of hurt that was clearly not arriving for the first time. Then the composure returned, smooth and immediate, like water closing over a stone. The virtual room went silent in the way rooms only go silent when everyone in them understands that something irreversible has just occurred. Kimberly looked up from her phone. She saw her name outlined in green, the unmistakable indicator of an active microphone. She saw the chat, which had long since stopped being supportive and was now a dense, panicked wall of her name. She saw Brenda's face, still composed, looking directly at the camera with the kind of controlled calm that costs something to maintain. The realization moved through her body like cold water. Her hand found the mouse and clicked mute once. Then again the redundant second click, the reflex of someone trying to undo what cannot be undone. The silence that followed lasted 10 seconds. It felt considerably longer. Brenda's voice, when it came, was measured and final. She announced a brief recess, thanked the team, and closed the session. No names. No direct address of what had happened. Just the quiet, authoritative closure of someone who understood the moment, had already said everything necessary. 400 screens went dark. Kimberly sat in her suddenly very still home office and stared at the black rectangle where the meeting had been. Her phone lit up immediately. Texts from colleagues she had not spoken to in months. Her work laptop began generating notifications, access confirmations, reverting, system pings that meant nothing good. She knew what they meant. The formal summons arrived 43 minutes later. 3 names were attached to the private Zoom link. Dennis, head of human resources, Patricia, legal counsel, and Raymond, the chief operating officer. Kimberly clicked the link with the specific dread of someone walking into a room they built themselves. The 3 faces that appeared shared the collective expression of people who had spent 43 minutes preparing to have a conversation they found entirely unpleasant. Dennis led. Systematic, unhurried, no warmth. He outlined what had happened, the unmuted microphone, the duration, the recording, the content. Patricia cited the relevant code of conduct provisions. Raymond said almost nothing, which was worse than if he had spoken, because silence from a COO in a meeting like this is not neutrality. It is conclusion. Kimberly spoke. She said she had believed herself muted. She said the words were frustration, not conviction. She said 4 years of strong performance ought to mean something. Each explanation sounded thinner than the last, dissolving against the immovable fact of what the recording contained. Patricia reminded her that intent did not alter content, impact, or the legal exposure the company now faced. Dennis delivered the termination with efficient brevity. Effective immediately. 2 weeks severance. Equipment returned within 72 hours. All system access already revoked. No appeals process. No goodbye meeting. The call ended. Kimberly's laptop displayed an access denied screen where her dashboard had been an hour earlier. She sat in the chair her salary had paid for and did not move for a long time. Right here in this specific silence is a question worth sitting with. Has there ever been a moment in your life where one careless word changed the direction of everything that followed? Drop a yes in the comments if a mute mishap has ever frightened you, or share why you always double-check your audio now. Your story might be the one that saves someone else's career. Because what came next for Kimberly was not a soft landing. The mortgage on the apartment did not pause because her credentials had been revoked. Seattle's technology sector was not a large community, and information moved through it quickly. Her LinkedIn profile became a liability, the kind of page that circulated in Slack channels for the wrong reasons. Former colleagues went conspicuously quiet. Interviews that might have come did not come. What she did not know, sitting in her revoked silence, was that the clip had already begun moving through the company's internal channels, passed quietly between people who had felt something for a long time, and now had confirmation. Brenda closed the door of her home office at 11:30 that Tuesday, and did not open it again for 3 hours. The room was modest for someone of her position, dense bookshelves, a second-hand desk she had kept through 4 moves because she had chosen it herself at 23. On the wall above the monitor, a single framed printout, the first open-source repository she had ever published, built at 19 on a library computer in a city she rarely named in interviews, reserved in 45-minute increments because that was the limit the library imposed. The printout was not there for visitors. It was there for her. She sat with the morning. She did not call anyone. She did not draft a statement. She allowed the weight of what had been said about her, in a room full of her colleagues, in her own company, during her own meeting, to settle where it had landed, and she stayed with it. She had learned long ago that the impulse to convert hurt immediately into action was not always strength. Sometimes it was just a different kind of avoidance. The hurt was real. 41 years of building something, surviving the particular arithmetic of being a black woman in technology, the meetings where her ideas were credited to others, the promotions that arrived years late without acknowledgement of the delay, the exhausting calibration of how much of herself to bring into any given room, and still, to hear it stated that plainly, that publicly, by someone who had been smiling at her for 6 months, carried a specific weight that composure did not remove. But Brenda had not arrived at this position without preparation. She opened an encrypted folder she had been maintaining for nearly a year. Not a grievance file. Documentation, careful. Anonymized. Scrupulously factual. Project assignment patterns across the engineering division. Promotion timelines charted against performance data. Instances where contributions from underrepresented employees had been absorbed into broader team credit without individual acknowledgement. She had built it the way she had once built tools on borrowed library computers, methodically, without announcement, because the work was the point. Kimberly's 47 seconds had not created the problem. They had named it, loudly, permanently, on the record. Over the following 2 days, Brenda shared the anonymized evidence precisely to 3 board members she had come to trust, and to an external equity consultant whose work she had followed for years. She did not leak the clip. She did not make public statements. She presented data and let the data make the argument. Inside the company, the clip had already spread further than leadership anticipated. It moved through private channels, the ambient network of people who had felt something for a long time without being able to formally name it. Anonymous survey responses shifted in register. Meeting participation changed in ways that were subtle but unmistakable to anyone paying attention. The board launched a formal investigation within 2 weeks. It validated every pattern Brenda had documented. The findings recommended structural changes to project allocation, a redesign of the promotion review framework, and substantive bias training. The board accepted all 3 and gave Brenda full authority to implement them. Her standing did not merely survive the incident. It deepened. For Kimberly, the months that followed unfolded with the particular slowness of consequences that are not dramatic but are total. Interviews stalled when references were checked. A consulting arrangement fell through after due diligence. The clip had not gone public in the viral sense, but it had circulated widely enough in industry circles to function as a permanent annotation on her professional record. The life she had assembled began its quiet disassembly not with a single devastating moment, but with the steady accumulation of doors that simply did not open. Some months later, a technology publication ran a profile on Brenda that touched on her early history, the library computer, the open-source tools built in borrowed time, the repositories that had found a following before she ever held a corporate title. Readers found the detail striking that the woman dismissed as a diversity appointment had been writing code before most of her critics had written their first professional line. The irony was not lost on anyone paying attention. It was not lost on Brenda either. She had always known it. She simply had not needed anyone else to confirm it. The mute button failed on a Tuesday in October. But the truth had never been muted at all. It had simply been waiting for the room to go quiet enough to hear it.
If justice means something to you, like this video and share it. Let the algorithm know stories like this deserve to be heard. Subscribe so you never miss the next one, because trust me, they keep coming. Comment below what part of this story had you speechless. I will be down there reading. Until next time, stay sharp and never let anyone make you forget who you are.